welcome back to the Sandman Aftershow. This is Sean.
And this is Chris.
I used to saying that we're kind of changing up the format a little bit, but if you guys know the channel, you know we have some stuff on the horizon, so that's what we're doing. That, but tonight we're talking about the Sandman, our basically our second chapter, talking about the Sandman. We started last weekend, Friday night, talking about episode 1. And you and I dove further into the series, checking out episodes 2 through 6.
Yes, we did.
And if you haven't been with us up to this point, we are Dad and Rock. We do trailer reactions. We do after shows, basically talk about shows like this one here. With Netflix, it's a little wonky because of the binge model, so we have to, do things in chunks.
They make it a little difficult on us.
Yeah. But that's what we're doing here tonight. We are talking episode 2 through 6 of the Sandman. Have you already passed and watched episode 7 or only?
No, I haven't. I've stopped. As
Okay,
difficult it has been for me, I have stopped. I put the brakes on. You joked that I was going to sit down and watch the next 5 episodes after our last show.
Yeah.
I made it 5. I was almost falling asleep. I couldn't go much later than 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm an old man.
Right.
But I want to ask you now. 2 through 6. What have been your impressions of the show itself?
Well, I was actually waiting to be somewhat confused in the plot, but actually it's been because you kind of prepped me for that as far as things maybe being timey-wimey or spanning a long period of time, which they do, because you're basically seeing generations, and especially in this last episode, I mean, you see almost 500 years worth of scenes, him
Yeah.
sitting down with his friend. But so far, they've been able to tell the story in a way that I'm not confused at all, which is good.
Awesome.
I like that.
That's great. Yeah, because I was afraid that people can be very confused on how things are going. They don't explain who people are right up the gate.
Yeah.
They explain it down the line. I mean, for instance, Imperfect Host, you don't learn who Cain and Abel are until probably about 20 minutes into it, and you've already been introduced to the 2 characters.
Right. I thought I heard their names mentioned, and then when I saw Cain just put a pitchfork through Abel, I was like, "Oh, okay,
Yes.
that's them, all right."
Yeah, that's fun to see them. It was fun to see, Gregory, Erwin and Goldie. Just there was so many things that I just smiled about while I was watching the show.
So I'm going to do a brief recap of each and every episode, and then we'll kind of have a short discussion on each of them. I think that's the best way to go about it because
I think
each
it is absolutely.
episode is somewhat distinctive, like it's its own thing.
Oh yeah, it's its own story. It's clearly
Yeah.
its own distinct story. And if you guys are watching live with us, feel free to chime in. Let us know what you're thinking as we go.
So, episode 2 or chapter 2, as they're referring it to this show, they're referring it into chapters here. It's called Imperfect Hosts. And like you said, we get an introduction to Gregory the gargoyle, Cain and Abel. Essentially, Gregory, this gargoyle, is the last bit of magic that the Sandman had. And in order to kind of stir up some of his own mojo and get going on his quest here, he needs to sacrifice the poor gargoyle Gregory.
Oh, I know it sucks seeing Gregory go. It was
Yeah.
that was ruthless. That sucks. But
Another thing I noticed at the beginning of this episode, what's the butler's name?
Lucian.
Lucian, that's right. She gives a real kind of nice rundown of what we've missed over the last 100 years and what
Yeah.
Morpheus has missed over the last 100 years. People kind of lost faith, lost hope. She seems to be really one of the only ones that kind of held true and kept her guard.
And there was one thing that was different about this episode based on the graphic novel. And
Okay.
I wish they went ahead and did it because we're seeing characters, and they went away from it a little bit on even how they started the show in episode 1 when the Corinthian was already out and he was going to catch the Corinthian.
Yeah.
When he comes back for the first time, I said her name, Lucian, goes ahead and does a census essentially,
Right.
and she comes back to Morpheus saying there are 4 unaccounted for: the Corinthians, Brute and Glob, who we haven't met yet,
Okay.
and then the Fiddler's Green. So there's
Oh,
those 4 essentially are in the real world. We know of one.
right.
One of the next episodes is called the Dollhouse. Brute and Glob. That's when they're really introduced in the graphic novels. I'm assuming we're going to see them then, but so is the Fiddler's Green. and he's introduced in this storyline as well. And there's actually an episode called the collector, not the collectors, but the collectors. I think it is. So we're gonna get these characters. I wish they kind of gave us a rundown at the very beginning, like they did actually in the graphic novel.
I'll be honest, these episodes that we're covering here, and maybe we'll get more of them here later, but even the Corinthian, I feel like we've only kind of got bits and pieces of it. He kind of drops in here and there.
We're gonna get a lot of them coming
Oh,
up.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, good. That's what I figured because he seems more important than the amount of screen time that he's had so far.
he's a very prominent character within the Dollhouse storyline
Okay.
because the Dollhouse storyline goes right into the collector storyline, and
Right.
those storylines are very interwoven.
So Morpheus, he takes the magic from the gargoyle Gregory. He's got a little bit more now. He's got enough magic basically to traverse the dream realms. He starts visiting people's dreams, and while he's in there, he picks up a serpent and he picks up an egg, and then he heads to go see the three fates, which is another. Basically, we've got Cain and Abel, we got the three fates, we got the Sandman. Basically, a lot of these literary, biblically, historically, like all these different totems of like you know what I mean, like things that are in Greek history. It's
Yeah,
just like it's very cool so far. What I'm seeing as far as like the characters that make up the show so far are like these almost like like Thor. Just
yeah.
these fables and these tales that mankind has passed down from generation to generation over different cultures. So these are the three fates. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love the how he had to bring a sacrifice, and then he got the actual gargoyle egg, but he didn't give it to him, knowing he was going to go ahead and give it to Cain and Abel
Yeah.
because he felt bad
Right.
about needing to go ahead and reclaiming Gregory. You know,
You
his
can
whole
tell it
thing.
on his face. The acting was good too. The acting's subtle there with him. He doesn't give a lot, as far as his performance. It's very,
Yeah,
very low key. But
and I
even I
love
could
that about
tell.
him. I think they nailed the guy to play, Morpheus. I think they
Yeah.
just flat out nailed it.
Yeah. And the more I've seen from him, the more I think you're right. I think it was some really good casting there. So essentially he wins favor with the three fates. He's able to ask them three questions. And of course, three questions, three missing items of his. He goes and asks
I
where
loved when
or the
he tried
whereabouts.
asking a second question of each of them, and they flipped out on him.
Yeah,
You
they
know
were getting
better.
pretty mad. You don't do that with the fates. You don't do that. But
Yeah, you don't tempt fate.
exactly, yeah. So basically that's where that's kind of what's going on with Morpheus. These episodes, they're fairly simply structured as well, which I liked, where we had Morpheus's adventure, but then we also had the goings on of the son of
Oh, John Burgess. We
yeah,
hear John's name for some. We see John.
yeah.
We see him in the hospital. Did you know the okay? This is one of my things, and it has to be actually copyright approved, or they couldn't get the rights to use it. But do you know the hospital that he was in?
No.
He was in Arkham. That's Arkham Asylum.
Oh, see, I didn't get that at all
Yeah,
here.
no, and
Yeah.
I even stopped and I was looking at some of the badging and everything on the guards.
Yeah.
They must not have been able to got the rights to be able to use it.
No, because
But
it didn't say Gotham at all. It said Buffalo, New York. That's where he was, in Buffalo, New
yeah,
York. So they just took
that's
that
a yeah,
out of
that's actually Gotham. That's where he is, actually in the graphic novel.
I see. Okay.
Because
That's
there's something a little in the next episode that they omitted as well, probably for the exact same reason. When we get there, I'll bring that up too. Because I thought it was cool when I heard it when I was actually there.
here's Corinthian. He's found Ethel, basically. After all this time, Ethel stayed pretty well hidden. But he's found her. She doesn't feel safe with him. She's got some kind of amulet of protection that she uses to send him back to
Yeah,
the
she
realm from whence
traded
he
the
came.
helm for the amulet with a demon.
Yeah. So he basically he's able to protect herself and sends him away. Look at the teeth in his eyes.
Th-
That's creepy.
I was wondering how they were going to do that,
Yeah.
and it looks pretty cool. I mean,
Oh
I,
yeah.
I would if they were a little sharper, like to a point, a little bit more. I may have been a little better,
Right.
but I mean, that's just nitpicking, honestly.
Yeah. I thought the design is pretty cool there, and the effects held up pretty well too. But that's kind of where we leave it. Is that Ethel sends him back to the realm. Morpheus has got enough to kind of lead him on his next phase of his quest. He's going to head back to London. And there's one codec here in this too where Corinthian, he gets sent back to the dream realm, and he has a short conversation with Lucian as well.
And yeah, and he
Uh,
just like, I'm going back, and he just
yeah,
goes right
yeah.
back to the actual land of the living.
I thought it was interesting too. Like there are like enemies and I don't know, but the way they interact with each other, and we're gonna see it later with like Sandman interacting with the Morning Star and stuff. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
um there's this like familiarity, I guess, where it's like they all kind of know each other and they don't like leverage each other's power on each other too much because they're all kind of somewhat on a level playing field. I just love how these big, huge characters that we know of, as far as like as we know of from stories, how they
yeah,
interact with one another. I thought it was pretty
yeah.
cool.
That is pretty cool. 'Cause, like you said, they're all kind of on the same plane.
Yeah,
So I mean, some are more powerful than the others, and he refers to that later in an episode on how one of them's stronger than him, and he is.
right.
But he knows that he's safe essentially.
The next episode, we get chapter 3, Dream a Little Dream of Me. It's basically the Joanna Constantine episode. What'd you think about this one?
I didn't mind it, honestly. I mean, I liked what they did with it. All the only thing different what they really did with this outside of, they're holding true to his graphic novel, which I'm loving.
Yeah,
You can't always say that they, shows hold true to the source material. I mean, there are some people that are a little don't like a few things on it, but when it comes to the story, just changing her character to Joanna, which okay, I got no issue with. But when it comes to her girlfriend and the sand and all of that, that's essentially they kept that character the same. They could have flipped both of the characters completely and had that be a guy, and I would have had no issue with it either. But I love the back and forth between the two.
yeah,
I mean, she's not afraid of him. He knows it,
right.
and because you see her go ahead and exercise a demon out of one of the this dude, a soccer player.
Yeah. So in the comics, it was John Constantine.
Yes,
I see. Okay, and they did a swap, and I think Joanna in the comics is in the comics, but she's like
she's in
John's
it, but
mother,
yeah,
right?
she's there. I think there's more stories beyond the ones that we're getting right now.
Yeah,
I haven't dug too far beyond what I know. I know I love so much of what I know already. So
right.
it's a venture I'll be going down here shortly. But right now I'm just kind of staying with what I love.
Yeah, so we'll just talk through the entirety of this kind of this story arc with Joanna Constantine. So yeah, she gets called upon to this church, and the person that she knows there, the Rick, is having some sort of issue where she thinks there's a demon that's taking over a princess. Turns out it's actually the footballer that she's trying to
Yep.
marry, and this demon escapes, and she ends up exorcising this demon, sending it back to hell before Sandman can even get any info from him.
Oh yeah, he was looking to get the info, and she's like, "Bye," and he's gone. He's like, "Oh, he was up. He was a little irritated."
Sure, yeah. As much as he shows himself being irritated, it's just like a flicker of a frown. There's not much going on there.
Man, yeah, and I mean that storyline was what it was. I mean, there wasn't. I didn't dislike the storyline. I didn't like the storyline. It's just it to me that storyline is just what it is. It's a means to an end for him to go ahead and gain the sand back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So he gets his sand back, his first item, his first totem that he
He
needs
showed
back.
some mercy though in this episode.
Yes. I was just
When you
gonna
went,
say that. What I took away from this episode is that she really calls him out on his BS, right? Like towards the
yeah,
end there when he's gonna walk out on Robin and Robin's there suffering and dying. And he's just kind of doesn't feel anything about that. She's like, hey, you're being unnecessarily jaded here, and you think of all humanity as Roger Burgess,
yeah,
or Roderick Burgess,
Roderick
and that's
Burgess, yeah,
just not the case. And she kind of calls him out on some BS of his, and he kind of has to pause there for a second and think
and
about his actions.
yeah, he folded to it. He went with it, and he went ahead and gave her a nice dream
Yeah,
to go away to pass away to. So
yeah,
I thought that was a nice touch, and it is something that takes place in the graphic novel as well. But it's the visuals. I mean, I'm impressed with the visuals.
yeah.
I love the tone of it, I like the darkness. I love all of it feels proper, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, just a little humanity there showing in Morpheus, which was nice because he's typically so stoic and quiet. So when we get a little bit character growth and development with him, that was nice. Um, and then on the flip side of this story arc too, Ethel goes and sees John in Arkham, but which is really Buffalo, New York, or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
and she ends up giving the amulet of protection to him, apologizing for being such a crap mother to him the whole time. Apparently, he had the ruby. He stole the ruby at one point and killed some
Yeah.
people, and he's been in this hospital, which he considers a prison for years and years now, decades probably.
Yeah, and they didn't get into this. When he originally got the ruby, he was manipulating the ruby to go ahead and actually have it answer to him rather than answer to Morpheus.
Ah,
So
okay,
he was changing the 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 dynamics of the actual ruby. And when he was messing with it, something went wrong. Boom, people died. That's when he
right.
was sent to Arkham.
Yeah, and so basically, just a chain of events here. They have a long conversation. She's like, she ends up telling him pretty much the truth of his entire life, as far as
Yeah.
because he's only had this one side of it growing up as a child. We were going from place to place, but he really kind of learns his mother's intentions. That the whole time she was really just trying to keep him safe from this threat that she perceived throughout their entire lives.
I
And
loved it. It was
yeah,
heartfelt. It was well done. Both of them, you felt the actual emotion back and forth. So I was impressed with this. I thought this was it was a change of pace on the
hmm
rest of the actual show. So when they actually sat down, it was just two of them in a room just talking. It felt good.
it did. I liked it too, and I really felt her scene when her 116 years really caught up to her when she gave that amulet away, and they had to say goodbye, and then immediately, like right, like the guards come in thinking that he did something to her,
Mhm.
and he immediately puts that amulet in action, and yeah, some blood splatter.
Yeah. Now this is what I was talking about when he went in the novel when he's walking out. I got a kick out of this, and I think if they did it, you would have gotten a kick out of it too. He's walking out, and he walks by no other than Doctor Crane
Oh, funny!
leaving
Wow.
Arkham, and he's getting ready to try to hang himself. And he asked, John, where are you going?
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, I'm leaving. I'm gonna go do this, this, and this." And he says, "Well, I'll see you when you get back." He said, "I'm not coming back." He says, "We always come back."
Oh, that's funny.
That whole interaction, like it had to have been for they couldn't get the rights to use
Right.
Crane in this, but that whole interaction, it felt a little different. And I think when what they wound up doing is they put the Corinthian at the end
hmm
with the jacket as kind of a replacement as for that interaction.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because that's basically the end scene of this episode is that Corinthian shows up. He already found Ethel. Now from Ethel, he's found John and he's sending John on his way because it's in the Corinthians' best interest to keep the ruby with this family and away from the Sandman.
And away from Morpheus, because Morpheus is the one that will go ahead and it will unleash his power on the Corinthian.
Yeah. All right. So the next episode is episode 4, which is entitled "A Hope in Hell," which I thought was very appropriate given especially the finale of this episode too. Basically, this is the quest for the helm to get the helm back from hell.
I was looking forward to this episode to this point the most, and I was disappointed on how they did this episode. Great
Okay,
episode still, but I've got some critiques about it that I wish they didn't change.
interesting. Okay, so he basically this is a journey up towards the Lucifer's palace, basically wherever Lucifer lives in hell,
Yeah.
and this guy Squatter Bloat ends up taking Morpheus the long way because they've prepared for his arrival. He
Oh,
has
this
to
was
walk.
planned.
Oh
This
yeah,
whole this whole thing was planned because he was purposely walking. They did not address this though. He was purposely walking by Nadia,
yes,
and I loved how they did that. I love how she addressed him, and not only addressed him as Kaikul, because I mentioned that was his name. I think last time we were talking,
yeah.
but they also because he will go ahead and look differently upon who is looking at him.
hmm
So he will look differently, whatever. So when she sees him, she sees the character that they showed.
Right. She sees how she saw him in life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when they were going back and forth, and I don't know if they're going to get into this later in the season. I don't know if they've got time to. But the reason he sent her down to basically to hell is she denied him. She found out that he was one of the endless, and an actual human could not be with the endless. It was forbidden. And
Oh,
he was
okay.
going to bend the rules for her. And she steadfast said no. And she wound up committing suicide. And because of that, he damned her to hell.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow,
that's
that's
why he
deep.
said and that's why he says he still loves her, but it's been 10,000 years and he hasn't forgiven her.
Oh my gosh, that's tragic. That's
Yeah.
awful. Oh, this guy has such a rich history, man, and that's what I love going through these episodes is seeing little touches of the fact that he's been around for all time. So he's got so many things, and it's funny that it's like we're catching up to him in this point of his story, right?
Yeah.
Being captured, I think being captured for 100 years really kind of shook him to his core, where he's maybe getting a little complacent or placated in his role in the universe, and then all of a sudden have all of his power taken away from him. It really kind of shook him to the
Yeah.
core.
Well, I love the fact that they give us little nuggets saying that
Yeah.
there's more going on just, beyond what we're seeing. That little story right there tells you there was a lot more going on with him.
Yeah.
And then he's got a whole family dynamic that we haven't even dove into yet.
He faces off with Lucifer Morningstar, played by Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones, Gwendolyn
This is
Christie. How do you think
this
she
is
did?
when she did great, but this is where my problem starts.
The actual battle between the two?
That never happened.
Oh, okay.
The battle between those two never took place. When he shows up to the palace, he actually talks to Lucifer,
Right.
but he finds out in his 100 years of being gone and things falling apart, it becomes a kingdom that is ran by three. It's Lucifer, it's Beelzebub, and it's Azazel.
Mm,
So there's three rulers in hell now at this point.
okay.
And when he shows up and he's trying to find out who has his helm, there's a conversation similar to what happened. Basically, they summon all the demons and they find out that Cornzon has the actual helm.
Hmm.
No big deal. Cornzon basically says, you got to challenge me for it. And he doesn't call on a champion. He doesn't call on Lucifer to be his champion.
Right.
He does it. He battles him. So basically, and if Morpheus wins, which we know he does, he gets his helm back.
Right.
Cornzon is basically he's punished. So he goes from a general to being punished in hell for eternity now. That's basically
Oh.
his punishment.
Hmm.
They glossed over all of that. There's no punishment essentially for Cornson. He's got kicked off, the palace wall and back down to the demons.
Right.
But also they changed the actual environment that they were fighting in. So they
Okay.
weren't in this palace. They took them to like an amphitheater where everybody can watch, and they were on
Ah.
like a stage. So this was a theatrical type environment that was happening, where all the demons were cheering as Cornzon was winning throughout the battle.
In the comics, was it an actual like fight? Because this was like a metaphysical,
No,
like,
it was
okay,
this
I'm a
was
direwolf.
exactly what it was. And I was curious if
Okay.
they were going to do that because I was wondering how they were going to pull it off. And how
Yeah.
they did it, I was fascinated by it. I loved it.
Yeah. The first thing she says is, "I am a direwolf," and I was like, "I want that's gotta be a Game of Thrones reference, right?" But, it's maybe it's not. Because she's like, "I'm a direwolf," and then, he goes, what's the thing here?" I actually wrote it all down, but, let's see, direwolf, and then eventually they go to, like, "I'm life, I'm, anti-life, I'm
I am
hope."
hope, and you
Yeah.
can't defeat hope.
Yeah, which that to me, that ended that's such a, like, a power of love, kinda like it was just kind of a trope. I don't know, that hit me weird, just like, "Oh, okay." I don't know. It wasn't very clever, honestly. Like, who's around to have hope if everything's dead, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. But apparently that was enough to get one over on Lucifer just to say, "I am hope," and, I'm worried well, not worried, but I'm curious about the repercussions, like, if the devil is beaten at, their own game in hell, um, what does that mean?
Well, he even mentions that like she is stronger than he is.
Yeah.
She is much stronger than he is. And I think they've been at odds before.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time I think that they would be on the separate sides of things.
Mhm.
And even she threatens him. when they're leaving, and he breaks out something like, uh, to the extent of how powerful are you if you have no one to fear you?
Right.
So
That's
his
true.
dr
I did like that. Yeah, as far as the dream's power in hell, basically he says something along the lines of, what's the point of hell if there's nobody there to dream about heaven? Because that's the whole thing. It's like, they're wishing they were somewhere else. They're dreaming of not being there. But if nobody has those hopes, those desires, those dreams, then really, well, you're just like tending farm or something. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
exactly.
yeah,
Real
torch
quick,
me.
guys. Oh, sorry, man. Real quick, if you're watching this for the first time, awesome. Thanks for joining us. We are 100% interactive. So if you comment, you like something that's happened in the show that we are talking about, go ahead and let us know. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We have the first episode. We did a breakdown of that one. We're doing 2 through 6 today, and we're going to go ahead and do 7 through 10. We thought those were live episodes, but we kind of oopsie. But go ahead, hit that like, subscribe button, comment. Go ahead and comment afterwards if you're not watching live. We'll interact with you at then as well. Wow, that was difficult to say.
So basically Morpheus, he gets his helm back, all right? So he's got his sand, he's got his helm. The only thing left is the ruby, which
The
we
ruby
move forward here in the story. So he leaves hell. The other side of the coin, once again, to kind of catch up on John Burgess's storyline.
or
He
Doc.
walks
Okay,
out.
I'm done calling him John Burgess, and you're done calling him John Burgess too. It is
Okay.
Doctor Destiny. That's who he is. He's Doctor Destiny. When they
They don't
start
say
calling
that
him,
once in the show.
no, they never say it. And once
So
again,
I
I
can't I
think
can't
it's
call him that if that's not his name in the
yeah,
show.
it's Doctor Destiny. Damn it. I think it's another, DC must own that name, so they
Yeah,
had to call him John Burgess, and they couldn't call him Doctor Destiny. I wanted them to utter the name just once,
they didn't
and I
do it.
never got it.
They probably have to cut a lot because this show does move at a really quick pace, and you kind of feel that as you're watching it that maybe you're missing out on some stuff because it is an adaptation after all. I mean, it is 10 episodes and 10-hour long episodes or 40-minute episodes, something like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, they probably do have to take a. But it's because it seems like this original story was probably epic. The graphic novel is probably intense.
Yeah,
I don't know how long it is itself, but
it's great.
um,
Yeah, and we don't even learn his name until this episode or this part of the story
yeah.
within, you know, uh, within the graphic novel. So if they didn't say it in Arkham, it was no big deal.
He stumbles out of his, hospital that's not Arkham in Buffalo, New York, and he almost gets hit in the street by, the therapist from Ted Lasso, Rosemary.
Yes. Oh, yes. She's driving. Why is she driving?
I
She's
know, she
supposed to be
rides a
riding her
bike.
bike.
Yeah, I noticed it immediately. I was like, "Hey, I know you." But her name is Rosemary in this show. She offers a guy a ride, and, basically the entire time, he's kind of in awe of how just kind she's being out of nowhere. I don't think he has a very high um, opinion of humanity as a whole, but Rosemary's really giving him a good example of what a kind human can be. So he's along for the ride, literally, and
And they start talking a little bit, and then he starts kind of opening up a little bit, and she starts getting scared.
yes, understandably so, because he drops the just offhandedly drops the fact that he's murdered people in his past, and
Yeah.
right then she starts clenching up.
Yeah, and they're in Gotham, so I mean, come on. And she picked him up in front of Arkham.
Yeah, exactly, right. And plus he's all disheveled. He's a mess. He escaped
Doesn't
from
know where he is. He's in his pajamas still. Come on. I
yeah.
mean, there's so many red flags here, Rosemary.
Yeah, not good. They stop at a gas station. The gas attendant gets exploded because he ends up calling 911 at her request, and he's kind of upset with her. He's like, "I wish you wouldn't do that, or please don't do that." And they take off from there to go get the ruby.
To go back to get the ruby itself. Now, this is a change that I enjoyed, that I liked, because I was kind of shook the way they ended this interaction with these two in the actual graphic novel.
Yeah.
Because he takes her, or she takes him all the way to get the ruby. He gets out, he winds up giving the jacket back, and in the graphic novel, he turns around and kills her.
Oh, really?
She actually dies.
No kidding.
And this here, I like how she stayed. He came back, was confused why she stayed because he knew she wanted to leave,
Yeah.
but she didn't. And she offered him another ride. And the fact that he gave her the amulet to go ahead and give her protection from anybody else.
Yeah.
I like that change. That was a narrative change that I liked.
Yeah, I really feel this character, Dr. Destiny, John Burgess, he didn't have a ton of screen time because it was only, 2 or maybe 3 episodes at most that even featured him, and
Oh, but he
he's
got one episode was almost just the next one was completely him. He almost got an hour worth of
yes.
screen time by himself.
That's true, in the diner, but his arc, I thought there was some depth there. He wasn't just like a one-note maniacal villain, mustache twirling character, you know what I mean? Like, there was some depth to him, like, as far as, understanding as a viewer why he is the way he is and why he feels the way he does, and, I was under the opinion I always had in the back of my mind that he may harm her just because he's a villain in the story, but the whole time I felt this actor, I forget his name, but he's been in a ton of stuff. He was in the
Yeah, I
Harry Potter
recognized him
movies and stuff.
immediately.
Yeah, but, like, he really kind of exuded that he did not wanna harm her, like, he was kinda rooting for her, like, and he was thankful for her, because I feel like he kind of she either reawakened some things in him or had him feel certain ways that he didn't know that he could feel about his fellow man, so, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode and his arc in particular.
Oh yeah,
Uh, go
I
ahead.
say we got a comment here from Ali. Say, hey guys, so divide into Sandman a bit. Found hell, it was just not for me. The same thing sitting and watching Netflix original order.
Found it terrific, actually. Okay. Well, we're glad you enjoyed The Order. I haven't seen any trailers, about that, but, so far, I know you're loving The Sandman. I'm enjoying it too.
I knew I was gonna love it 3 years ago when I heard they were making it. I've
Yeah,
been so pumped for this. And yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. This isn't a show for everyone. The aesthetic isn't for everybody. And if you don't quite know the storyline, everything about it, I can see how it can be a little more difficult to follow.
yeah. We're gonna move on here to chapter 5 entitled 24/7. There's no Morpheus in this episode.
None at all. This one here, this was the episode I was the most curious about
Yeah,
because this in the graphic novel, this is bonkers. And they pretty much did it. I mean, they didn't back off a whole lot on this episode at all on what they did in the graphic novel, which I was flabbergasted by because I didn't
yeah.
think they can do it.
This episode is bonkers. In the middle of the notes I wrote, "Man, yikes, this episode is a detour."
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that they never referenced until the very end.
Mhm,
And I'm going to sidetrack us probably a little bit here, but go figure. Uh, when he's actually in there with the ruby and he's sitting at the counter staring at the television,
mhm.
not only is he controlling what's happening in the diner, he's controlling everything outside the diner as well. So the world, he basically wants the world to crumble and he's going to build it anew. That was what he was doing there.
I did get that at eventually, and it was the news reports on the TV that made me realize that basically this diner was just a microcosm, a small example of what the entire world was feeling. Whatever spell he cast with the ruby in this diner, basically that same effect that everybody raising their level of honesty and maybe being a bit too honest and losing of their inhibitions and just making choices that they might not necessarily make if they were of the
Yeah.
right mind. That kind of thing was going on the entire world, because at the end of the episode you see Morpheus, or it might be even the next one, but stuff's just tore up and
Well, yeah, it
everything's
was at
on
the end of that
fire.
episode. Yeah. Because it was
Yeah.
after he went ahead and, well, he winds up getting his ruby back at the end of this episode because
Hmm.
he intervenes.
Yeah. Is it
And
even worth talking about the actual patrons of this diner? I mean, they have kind of an interesting story, but at the end of the day, like, I don't even know if they lived or died at the end of this thing.
they all died. Everyone in
Okay,
that diner all died. They all
gotcha.
died in some manner. If they were driving nails through their hands and then chopping their arm off with a saw or
Yeah,
cutting their throat with a they all died in some way.
yeah, pretty horrific, I'd say. It's
From the couple that came in that was having an anniversary, the guy sitting at the bar that was there before the interview, the
the
waitress,
waitress, who's also a writer. Yeah,
yeah, the short cook that was, doing unthinkable things with the waitress's son,
yeah,
uh, the the lady that was in there that had a fight with her girlfriend. Yeah, all these
right.
characters had some type of, yeah, thing going on. So once he started playing with the ruby, he started messing with all of them.
Yeah, and throughout the episode, he's got a really harshly tainted view of of humanity, and it was, but it's hard with this villain because it's like, is it him and his experiences, or is it the ruby that's kind of tainting him because it was never meant to be held by a human, or is it a little bit of both? You know what I mean?
I think it's the ruby, frankly.
Yeah,
I frankly I believe it's the ruby that was going ahead and driving him down this road,
right,
of just kind of almost like losing his mind or thinking he can do things that he typically wouldn't be able to do. And even Morpheus addresses that later. And that's
right.
why he lets him live.
Yeah, so this was a crazy episode. It was kind of a standalone because, like you said, mostly it's the guy's story, and it's a bit of a microcosm. The whole world's gone to hell because of John and Doctor Destiny. See, you done did it now. Now I'm going to call him Doctor Destiny
Victory.
and the ruby. But at the end of the day, basically, he destroys the ruby, thinking that it's going to harm Sandman in some way, but it actually has unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah, he uses the ruby to try to kill him, and he thinks he's killing him. And all of a sudden everything goes black, and then you see the ruby fall out of his hands. Well, next thing you know, he's standing in Morpheus's hand.
Right, that was a cool shot, actually.
That was a really awesome shot. And and then he finds out, you didn't kill me. You did me a favor. He didn't realize how much of his power that he encased within that ruby.
Yeah.
And that's when he regains his full power of, being Morpheus himself. And I love, once again, you see the compassion.
Mhm.
You see, instead of killing him, he references the ruby, how he was never supposed to have it.
Right.
And he's just going to, instead of killing him like he thought he was going to do, he took him home. He took him back to Arkham, laid him down, and walked out and left.
Yeah, and I got the impression that he might be in some sort of a coma or something, but in his coma, he's having nice, relaxing dreams, like he's at peace, which is, a power that Sandman can provide people. That's why I'm digging on the Sandman character because it's like he could do either one with you. He can put you at peace and kind of give you eternal bliss in a way, or he could just like make your life a living nightmare in the waking hours or not,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool.
Dude, now
Um,
we're going into my favorite, hands down, not even remotely close episode to this point in the season.
I'm glad you said that because it's actually mine too. I actually loved episode 6, which is entitled, I believe, "The Sound of Her Wings."
The Sound of Her Wings. This episode was tragic. It
Yeah,
was heartfelt.
yeah,
I thought Kirby Howell Bissett, the death we're seeing right there,
yeah,
was fantastic.
yes,
I mean, I thought she played that character beautifully. The way she was able to be subtle, how the smile, the softness when she was talking to people when she knew she was taking them away,
the
all of
warmth.
that.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. And all of those same things, like the compassion, the humanity, and just the way she's relating and talking to her brother. You know what I mean? It starts out as a simple thing where he's just in a park feeding pigeons. He doesn't know what to do with himself.
And she's pissed off at him.
Yeah,
She's legitimately mad at him because she was concerned. And she
right.
was like, I didn't think. She said, that's exactly it. You did not think.
Yeah,
And it really that portion of the episode, and really this episode as a whole, really shows you how close Death and Dream are.
yes,
Those two are tight when it comes to the family. So the fact that she was concerned about him and she let him along, just let him follow throughout her day and what she was doing. And basically the struggle that she had at one point when
hmm
she was going to walk away from doing what she was doing, but realized they need her as much as she needs them.
exactly. Yeah, and she takes her job very seriously. And I thought that the way this was portrayed, as far as her like going from one person to the next, easing their suffering, bringing them into the next plane of existence, whatever that may be, and her just being like a warm presence, and her understanding that's exactly what people need. They need a smile. They need somebody to tell them it's okay, and to basically hold their hand through this transition. Yeah, this scene right here with this old guy Harry, who was playing the violin, I thought it was amazing. Brought a tear to my eye. I thought it was great.
Oh, this here, the one that was heartbreaking to me was when she walked into the nursery, picked
Yeah,
up the baby, and turned around and walked away. I'm glad they didn't linger. I'm glad they didn't
No.
did the mother's response. We didn't see any of that. We seen the hurt in her eyes. We've seen actually Morpheus showed hurt.
Yeah.
Like he felt the pain
Yeah.
when she said, "Okay, little one." I mean, it wasn't long, but it's time to come with me.
It was very clinical, almost the way like somebody that works, in our realm, the real world, in a hospital or something has to be. You have to kind of detach yourself emotionally when it comes to very serious stuff like that. And I thought it was played, yeah, very well, very tastefully. But yeah, I think it's just very cool how they portrayed that.
I love see now. I wasn't sure how they're going to go ahead and do the Franklin because Franklin, there's that interaction with him, the soccer player,
Yes.
and he basically is hitting on her,
Right.
and she knows his name immediately,
Yeah.
but she's like, "I'll see you again later." And I wasn't sure if they were going to do that. The one because I didn't know, like just like going into episode 24, I didn't know how they were going to do this
Yeah.
because some of these things are such touchy subjects. I mean, granted, her character is death, so you're going to deal with death in this
Yeah.
episode. But when like you said, going through and seeing all these people, and then they're talking and they're having that back and forth on how much how selfish Morpheus has been to everything, his quest, and it's now that his quest is over, what's going to happen going forward, and it basically her like teach. I like how he was like, "Thank you, sister. I learned something today."
Yes, I like that too. I think this character, this actor portraying Death as this characterization, I think she could hold her own series, honestly. If there was a show that was just like every episode was her dealing with a character, bringing them, transitioning them to like, I thought her portion of this episode was so interesting and so endearing that it's like, oh, I would watch that.
Yeah, no, I
um,
would too.
but yeah, so, and this episode is so interesting, and that's why it's almost so great, is because it's almost a two-parter. Like, there's almost 2
Hmm.
separate very separate stories in this one episode, and they lead right into into
Oh,
the
I
other.
loved how like she said, "I've got an appointment to make," and
Yeah,
she's gone ahead and she's taken Franklin back to the car accident where he's laying there and taking him away. And she said, "Well, you have an appointment you missed last time too?" And I
right.
loved how they showed him actually being captured.
Yeah,
And then they showed the actual like tavern where he was supposed to meet him 100 years ago.
yes,
So it gives you context on why he missed it.
right.
And then it goes through the whole deal.
Oh, it goes through, every century. They go back in time, way back. So, basically, in present day, once he leaves death, he goes to this pub that's all boarded up now in present day, and he starts thinking about the days where he's been there in the past, and it goes all the way back to 1389, which was like, so long ago, right? And you see just all these like dirty people kind of in this pub drinking and stuff. It's 1380, it's like hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And him and Death are there. They're, brother and sister. They're kind of, she's in, poking him to be like, hey, you need to get out more and like hang around with humanity a bit and learn who you're
You gotta meet
dealing
the
with here.
people that you're letting dream.
Yeah, yeah. Know about them on their terms instead of just yours. And so that Death leaves, and they have a little bet where this guy, he was drinking, he's a patron, and he's like, hey, I've decided I'm not going to die. Everybody
I'm
dies, and that's stupid. He
Todd
literally says,
Gangling.
death is
Yeah.
stupid.
Death is and that's when he looks at no, Morpheus looks at Death. He's like,
Yeah.
really? And they both had that look in their eye, like, okay, this is gonna be fun. How are we gonna do this?
Yeah, so they choose this guy to basically not die. He lives forever. Not only does he live forever, but he pretty much just stays that same age forever and
Yeah,
ever.
he doesn't age. It's just the way he is.
And he basically, Morpheus interacts with them and says, I'm going to visit you. Come back to this pub once every 100 years. The guy's like, you're on, buddy, and I'll see you in 1489. And much to this guy's surprise, he does see him in 1489.
Well, yeah, they laugh it off then, and then he's like,
Yeah,
okay, what's going on here? Why am I still? Like, he starts questioning things.
right,
Why am I alive? Why am I being able to live this way? What's going on? Who are you? And I
right.
love how Morpheus never actually answers who he is. He never gives them an answer. He just
Yeah,
always, just kind of meets up with him, talks to him, asks him how he's been, what's going on,
yeah.
what experience has he had in the last 100 years, and he has everything from marriage to kids to wife dying in birth, the son dying.
Oh, he goes from being, like, the richest guy in town to, like, a pauper, a beggar on the streets, like, yeah, he's lived everything.
Oh, they try killing him because they think he's a witch.
Yeah,
They go through all these different adorations, and then this is where we actually see one of the first, uh, I would
Constantine?
say, yeah, Constantine when she comes into the play for the first time. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it's the first time they actually interact, but for show purposes, because later on in the show, it's like, oh, I've had her work with me or something like that in the past.
Yeah, the generational kind of thing, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they go to 1489, they only talk for, a little bit, they bump to 1589, it turns out Morpheus had something to do with William Shakespeare being so
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you
influential.
pick up on the Shakespeare deal?
Yeah, I thought that was very cool,
I'm
so that was
curious, there's
1589.
a little nugget here. That comes into play at the end of the graphic novel. So I'm curious if they're gonna end the show similar since they went out of their way to give us Shakespeare.
Mhm.
I wonder if they're gonna give us a little bit on how it ends.
Oh, that's interesting, okay,
Yeah,
so stay
because
tuned for that, there might be a payoff there.
they use that for a later story.
Mhm. He was basically a beggar on the streets, was burned as a witch in 1689. They meet up with Joanne Constantine's ancestor, I guess, in 1789. In 1889, there was a bit of an argument, though, where, this guy's been around for 400, 500 years now. He's feeling a little bit more comfortable with Morpheus. And he says, I think I've figured out why the heck you keep meeting me here. And I think it's
Yeah.
because you're lonely. You want some companionship.
You want a friend, and Morpheus gets pissed. You
He did
think
not like that
I
whatsoever.
yeah, no. And then he gets up, storms off, and then you can see, Hob regret it immediately.
Yeah.
He's
Because
like,
those
did I screw this up?"
That's how he feels, and it's like anytime you put yourself out there and, like, building a relationship with somebody else, and this is kind of an extreme example of that over, centuries, right?
Yeah, right?
But it's like when you're the one to make that first step and be like, "What is our relationship here?" And the other person, like, scoffs at it and walks and storms out, like, that's gotta suck.
It's gonna hurt just a little bit.
Yeah, but we fast forward to, 1989, one of my favorite years of all time, the year of, yeah, it was a great year for movies, and you and I were actually alive in that century.
Yeah,
Um,
now we're here.
yeah, 1989, they start playing some cool music, and he goes to this pub, Morpheus doesn't show up because he's captured.
He's captured. You see the big old brick cell phone he had?
Yes, that was cool, and he was
That
looking
was
like his
funny. I love
Miami
the fact
Vice
that
wear.
he was drinking the bourbon that,
Yeah.
he thought was older than him. He's like, "No, it's not older than me."
Yeah, I'm older than you think, pal. But he gets news that this pub is not going to be around much longer. They're going to develop some apartments on top of it. And you'd have to be rich to keep it open. But basically, so I got the impression because we're present day, I assume, is way past 1989. I think maybe this guy bought this property and that's why it's still standing. Maybe it wasn't toppled over anyway. It's still there. Because essentially, in present day, now that Morpheus is out, he listens to Death's advice. Don't you have an appointment to keep? And he
Yeah.
walks in on the guy, and it turns out they are friends.
Yeah, no, he said he had to make an apology for missing his appointment. He apologized to his friend,
Yeah,
and then you've seen emotion, you've seen him smile.
a little bit more depth and character development with Morpheus. I liked
Yeah,
it.
you've seen him smile. You've seen Hobbs Gandling smile as well. And he
Yeah,
sat down. He started. And there was a conversation that took place at that point,
right.
and that's where we cut cut the end of that scene. But that whole episode, I mean, like I said, that was hands down by far my favorite episode because they didn't change anything for any reason. They went
Hmm.
along with things. It felt great. It felt like I said, it felt heartwarming. It felt tragic.
Yeah,
And it had every emotion that you can go through in a story within just that one portion.
yeah. I loved it. I loved the first half with Death, and I love the second half. A little slice of life every 100 years in England. There, it was very cool. And how this episode ends, we get who I assume is Desire.
It's
They might have
desire,
named her,
yes.
but um, Desire seems the one that had a hand in the capturing of Dream. Um,
This is a little outside of my realm. Like I'm not. This isn't something. This is some liberties I think they're taking with the story,
mhm.
but per the names of the episodes, I think they're going to say she's the one that may be pulling the strings in the background
Yeah,
of some of these things that take place. So I've got my eyes open on what they're doing with her because she didn't play a big part in these stories.
right. Yeah.
So that's my only little concern about them bringing her to the forefront. But I knew she was coming.
Right.
She was in the actual marketing.
So we haven't met Despair yet. We know Despair is around. Despair is part of the family. So we have yet to get more of Desire, see Despair, and the Corinthian. I'm sure the Corinthian's going to pop up
Oh, the
again.
Corinthians coming. He's going to be coming hard, fast, and hard on you.
Yeah,
He's coming. We're gonna get the serial convention, which
I don't
is
know what
with the
that even means.
collectors.
I don't know what that means.
It's. I'm curious how they're going to do Rose Walker. I'm curious how they're going to bring uh uh the two that other ones, Brute and Galop. I'm curious how they're going to bring them into storyline.
Yeah,
They bring Rose Walker into storyline, which you're going to. The Fiddler's Green is going to be there. He's a massive player with her,
right.
kind of looking over her. So uh, I'm excited to finish this. I'm happy and thrilled to be talking about it, on here with you and everyone that's watching. But
Now you
man,
get to watch the remainder of the episodes.
it's taken a lot of restraint just
Yeah.
to stop.
We are going to be back here probably this, what do you think, Friday night, Saturday night?
I'll say Saturday night.
All right, coming up this Saturday, we are going to discuss the remainder of The Sandman on Netflix, episodes 7 through 10, as we finish up this season. I assume, is it just going to be one and done season of this show, or what do you think?
I haven't heard. Um, I'm not sure. The way that they're going through the actual graphic novel, it's almost like it was only planned for a one-time thing.
Okay.
But as far as I know, there's more out there. But this story, there's a lot of story they're telling within a 10 episode storyline.
Yeah.
So they're pushing a lot into it, and it doesn't feel rushed. It feels right. Everything feels like it's pretty much where it should be.
hmm
I'm just curious on how they're going to finish it because there's really
Um,
no ending to the story.
Right, in any comic book, it just keeps going and going, whether it's a superhero character or not. That's what I love about this is, it comes from DC Comics, but this is in no way like a superhero tale. This is all about kind of like we mentioned before, kind of the mythical figures and totems of humankind and storytelling, like we're getting to see here in this show, which is very very cool. So we're going to be back here Saturday night to discuss the Sandman episodes 7 through 10. Be sure to stick around. We're continuing our coverage with Big Brother as well. We'll be here talking about that. Eviction night Thursday night coming up. It's going to be week 5 of the Big Brother house, I think.
Yep.
And then, as always, we're going to be, reacting to any big trailers that drop out or that come out and all that other stuff. So if you
Yeah.
haven't liked and subscribed to the channel already, go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Keep an eye on our social medias as well. I like keeping videos out there. So, like you said, uh, yeah, that's pretty much what we got this week. I guess until we see you guys next time, go ahead and I guess keep it cheesy.
See ya.